Stephen King, later. For Chris Lott, there are only so many tomorrow. Michael London. Marsden's house came into view. It was like one of those Hollywood Hills mansions you see in the movies, big and jutting out over the drop. The side facing us was all glass. The house that heroin built. Liz sounded vacuous. There was one more curve before we came to the paved yard in front of the house. Liz drove around it and I saw a man. Liz drove around it and I saw a man in front of the double garage where Marsden's fancy cars were. I opened my mouth to say it must be Teddy, the gatekeeper, but then I saw his mouth was gone, and given the red hole where his mouth had been, he hadn't died a natural death. Like I said, this is a horror story. I don't like to start with an apology. There is probably even a rule against it, like never ending a sentence with a preposition. But after reading over the 30-page I've written so far, I feel like I have to. It's about a certain word I keep using. I'm learning a lot of four-letter words from my mother and used them from an early age, as you will find out. But this is one with 5 letters. The word is later, as in later on, and later I found out, and it was only later that I realized. I know it's repetitive, but I had no choice, because my story starts when I still believed in Santa Claus and the Tooth Fairy. Although even at 6 I had my doubts. I'm 22 now, which makes this later, right? I suppose when I'm in my 40s, always assuming I make it that far, you look back on that I thought I understood at 22 and realize there was a lot I didn't get at all. There is always a later. I know that now, at last, until the day. When I guess it is all before that. My name is James Conklin, and once upon a time I drew a Thanksgiving turkey then that I thought was the absolute cat's ass. Later, and not much later, I found out it was more like the stuff that comes out of the cat's ass. Sometimes the truth really sucks. I think this is a horror story. Check it out. Chapter 1. I was coming home from school with my mother. She was holding my hand. In the other hand, I clutched my turkey, the ones we made in first grade the week before Thanksgiving. I was so proud of mine, I was practically shitting knuckles. What you did see was put your hand on a piece of construction paper and then trace around it with a crayon. That made the tail and body. When it came to the head, you were on your own. I showed mine to Mom and she's all yeah, right, totally great. But I don't think she ever really saw it. She was probably thinking about one of the books she was trying to sell. Flogging the product, she called it. Mom was a literary agent, see. It used to be her brother, my Uncle Harry, but Mom took over his business a year before the time I am telling you about. It's a long story and kind of a bummer. I said, I used forget green because it's my favorite color. You know that, right? We were almost to our building by then. It was only very blocks from my school. She saw, yeah. Also, you play or watch Barney and the Magic School Bus when we get home, kiddo. I've got like a zillion calls to make. So I go yeah, which earned me a poke and a grin. I loved it when I could make my mother grin because 7 at 6 I knew that she took the world very serious. Later on I found out part of the reason was me. She thought she might be raising a crazy kid. The day I am telling you about was the one when she decided for sure I wasn't crazy after all, which must have been sort of a relief and sort of not. You don't talk to anybody about this, she said to me later that day, except to me, and maybe not even me, kiddo, okay? I said okay. When you're little and it's your mom, you say okay to everything. And unless she says it's bedtime, of course. Or to finish you broccoli. We got to our building and the elevator was still broken. You could say things might have been different if it had been working, but I don't think so. I think that people who say live is all about the choices we make and the roads we go down are full of shit. Because check it, stairs of elevator we still won't have come out on the third floor. When the fickle finger of fate point at you, all roads lead to the same place. That's when I think I may change my mind when I'm older, but I really don't think so. Fuck this elevator, Mom said. When you didn't hear that, kiddo. Hear that? I said, which got me another grin. Last grin for he that afternoon, I can't tell you. I asked her if she wanted me to carry her bag, which had a manuscript in it like always, that day a big one. Looked like a 500-page. Mom always sat on a bench reading while she waited for me to get out of school, if the weather was nice. She said, sweet offer, but what do I always tell you? You have to tote your own burden in life, I said. Correctamundo. It is Regis Thomas? I asked. Yes, indeed. Good old Regis. Who pays our rent? It is about Roanoke? Do you even have to ask Jamie? Which made me snicker. Everything good old Regis wrote was about Roanoke. What was the burden he toted in life? We went up the stairs to the third floor. Very two of the apartments plus ours at the end of the hall. Ours were the fanciest one. Mr. and Mrs. Barkett were standing outside. 3A and I knew right away something was wrong, because Mr. Barkett was smoking a cigarette, which I hadn't seen him do before and was illegal in our building anyway. His ears very bloodshot and his hair was all crazed up in grey spikes. I always called him Mr., but he was actually Professor Barkett and taught something smart and NIU, English and European literature, and I later found out Mrs. Barkett was dressed in a nightgown and her feet were bare. That nightgown was pretty thin. I could see most of her stuff right through it. My mother said, Marty, what's wrong? Before he could say anything back, I showed him my turkey. Because he looked sad and I wanted to cheer him up, but also because I was so proud of it. Look, Mr. Barkett, I made a turkey. Look, Mrs. Barkett. I held it up for her in front on my face because I didn't want her to think I was looking at her stuff. Mr. Barkett paid no attention. I don't think he even heard me. Dear, I have some awful news. Mona died this morning. My mother dropped her bag with the manuscript inside it between her feet and put her hand over her mouth. Oh no, tell me that's not true. He began to cry. She got up in the night and said she wanted a drink of water. I went back to sleep and she was on the couch this morning with a comforter pulled up to her chin, and so I tiptoed to the kitchen and put on the coffee because I thought the pleasant smell would wake. He really broke down when Mom took him in her arms the way she did me when I hurt myself. Even from Mr. Barkett was about 174, I found out later. What was when Mr. Barkett spoke to me? She was hard to hear, but not as hard as some of them, because she was still pretty fresh. She said, "Turkeys aren't green, James." "Well, man is," I said. My mother was still holding Mr. Barkett and kind of rocking him. They didn't hear her because they couldn't, and they didn't hear me because they were doing adult things. Comforting for moms, blubbering for Mr. Barkett. Mr. Barkett said, "I called Dr. Allen and he came and said she probably had a shock. At least that's what I thought," he said. He was crying so much it was hard to tell. He called the funeral parlor. They took her away. "I don't know what I'll do without her," Mr. Barkett said. "My husband is going to burn your mother's hair with his cigarette if he doesn't look out." And sure enough, he did. I could smell the singing hair. I kind of beauty shop smell. Mom was too polite to say anything about it, but she made him let go of her. And when she took the cigarette from him and dropped it on the floor and stepped on it, I thought that was a grody thing to do, extreme litter bugging, but I didn't say anything. I got that it was a special situation. I also knew that talking to Mr. Barkett and more would freak him out. Mom too, even a little kid, now certain basic things if he's not soft in the attic. You said pleasure. You said please. You said thank you. You didn't flap your weenie around in public or chew with your mouth open. And you didn't talk to dead folks when they were standing next to living folks who were just starting to miss them. I only want to say in my own defense that when I saw her I didn't know she was dead. Later on I got better at telling the difference, but back when I was just learning. It was her nightgown I could see through, not her. You didn't flap your wing around in public or chew with your mouth open, and you didn't talk to dead folks when they were standing next to living folks who were just starting to miss them. I only want to say in my own defense that when I saw her I didn't know shivers did. Later on I got better at telling the difference, but back when I was just learning, it was her nightgown I could see through, not here. Did people look just like living people, except were always wearing the clothes they did in. Meanwhile, Mr. Barkett was rehearsing the whole thing. He told my mother how he sat on the floor beside the couch and held his wife's hand till the doctor guy came, and again till the Mortican guy came to take her away. Conveyed her hands was what he actually said, which I didn't understand until Mom explained it to me. And at first I thought he said beautician, maybe because of the smell when he burned Mom's hair. His kind had tapered off, but now it ramped up again. Her rings are gone, he said through his tears. His crown had tapered off, but now it ramped up again. Her rings are gone, he said through his tears. Both her wedding ring and her engagement ring with big diamond. I looked on the night table by her side of the bed where she puts. When she rubs that awful smelling arthritis cream into her hands. It does smell bad, Mr. Barkett admitted. Lanolin is basically sheep dip, but it really helps. I nodded to show I understood, but didn't say anything. And on the bathroom sink, because sometimes she leaves them where I've looked everywhere. Well turn, I nodded to show understood, but didn't say anything. And on the bathroom sink, because sometimes she leaves them where I've looked everywhere. Well turn up, my mother soothed, and now that her hair was safe, she took Mr. Barkett in her arms again. Well turn up, Marty, don't you worry about it. I miss her so much, I miss her already. Mr. Barkett flapped a hand in front of her face. I give him 6 weeks before he's asked Dolores Magellan out to lunch. Mr. Barkett was blooding and my mother was doing her soothing thing like she did to me whenever I scared my knee, or this one time when I tried to make her a cup of tea and slopped hot water on my hand. Lots of noise in our words, so I took a chance but kept my voice low. Where are you ring, Mr. Barkett? Do you know? We have to tell you the truth when we're dead. I didn't know that at the age of 6 I just assumed all grown-ups told the truth, living or dead. Of course, back when I also believed Goldilocks was a real girl. Call me stupid if you want to. At least I didn't believe the very bears actually talked. Top shelf of the hall closet, she said. Way in the back, behind the scrapbooks. Who were? I asked, and my mother gave me a strange look. As far as she could see, I was talking to the empty doorway. Although by then she knew I wasn't quite the same as other kids. After a thing that happened in Central Park, not a nice thing, I'll get to it. I overheard her telling one of her editor friends on the phone that I was fey. What scared the shit out of me because I thought she meant she was changing my name to Faye, which is girl's name. I don't have the slightest idea, Mr. Barkett said. By when I suppose I was having the stroke, my throats would have been drawing in blood. Throats drawing in blood. I never forgot that. Mom asked Mr. Bucket if he wanted to come down to our apartment for a cup of tea or something stronger, but he said no, he was going to have another hunt for him wife's missing rings. She asked him if he would like us to bring him some Chinese takeout, which my mother was planning for dinner, and he said what would be good, thank you, Tia. My mother said the nada, which she used almost as much as yeh and right. When said we'd bring it to his apartment around 6, unless he wanted to eat with us in ours, which he was welcome to do. He said no, he'd like to eat in his place, but he would like us to eat with him. Except that he actually said it was our place, like Mrs. Barkett was still alive, which she wasn't, even thought she was there. By when you have found her rings, Mom sighed. She took my hand. Come on, Jimmy, we'll see Mr. Barkett later, but for now let's leave him alone. Mr. Barkett said, turkeys aren't green, Jimmy, and that doesn't look like a turkey anyway. It looked like a blob with fingers sticking out of it. You're not remembered. Did people have to tell the truth? Which is okay when you want to know the answer to a question, but as I said, the truth can't really suck. I started to be mad at her, but just when she started to cry and I couldn't be, she turned to Mr. Bucket and said, who makes sure you don't miss the belt loop in the back of your pants now? Dolores Megalon? I shouldn't smile and kiss a pig. She kisses his cheek, or kissed at it. I couldn't really tell which. I loved you, Marty. Still do. Mr. Barkett raised his hand and scratched the spot where her lips and touched him. as if he had an itch. I suppose that's what he thought it was.